You are Locked On Pistons Postcast, part of Locked On Sports Detroit, on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, welcome in, welcome on. What's going on? Welcome into a live Locked On Pistons postcast after a disappointing night at LCA. Pacers come away with a 111-100 win over the Pistons. Too many turnovers. That's what's on tap for today's show. We'll break that down. It was a missed opportunity for the Pistons as they could have jumped the Pacers in the standings. And as always, we'll wrap it up with studs and duds. That's all coming up on a live Locked On Pistons postcast. I am your host, Jake Riepma. You can follow me on Twitter at Jake_Riepma, formerly with 97.1 The Ticket, the Pistons flagship radio station, now with Locked On Sports Detroit, and fired up as always. If you're new around here, this is Locked On Sports Detroit. It's your post-game destination for all things Detroit. We've got live post-game reaction shows for you after Pistons games, after Tigers games in the baseball season, as that's coming right up. And of course, after Lions game, huge divisional matchup against Washington on Saturday night. So we'll have a live reaction show after that and after Michigan Wolverines football game. So, and the fall, but it all happens right here on Locked On Sports Detroit. Don't forget, your favorite podcast now has a newsletter. You can sign up for free at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com. It's your ultimate stop for team and league coverage, and it's delivered right to your inbox. LockedOnDaily.com. Start your day with the all-new free Locked On Pistons Daily newsletter. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final score, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets. Let me say that again, $300 in bonus bets. If you win your first bet, just visit FanDuel.com to get started. A chippy one tonight at Little Caesars Arena, and I just finished listening to JB Bickerstaff's post-game remarks, and kind of interesting. He said, kind of wrapped it up with, quote, when we kicked their ass in Indiana, it wasn't the same way. So he said, basically bring that energy all the time, when not just when you're winning. So perhaps that was a little bit of what the chippiness was about on the floor. But as always, getting your comments in, we'll read those throughout the course of this live program. But disappointing in the sense that the Pistons really had a lot going for them, playing some really good basketball, and the results were showing it, coming off that big win over the Knicks. They played really good basketball since the turn of the calendar, and even before that, as we've talked about at length on this program, but just didn't have it tonight. There was a couple of moments where you kind of scratched your head and said, yep, it's one of those nights. The Pascal Siakam launching of a long shot as the shot clock sounded on the inbounds was one of it. The missed dunk late in that game by Cade. It was just one of those nights is probably the best way to describe it. But for the Pistons, it's just their third loss in their last 11 games. So still playing a really good brand of basketball, going all the way back to that West Coast road trip right after the holidays, or right before, during the holidays, from the December 21st all the way till December 28th. And then upon returning home, again, had been playing some really good basketball. So tonight was a little bit of a surprise. Everybody was off their game, and the 19 turnovers certainly reflect it. From the very jump, the defensive game plan for the Pacers was very clear. Take Cade Cunningham out of this game. And you saw that with Tim Hardaway Jr. scoring the first 10 points of the basketball game for the Pistons, 3 threes and a free throw. But there just wasn't enough of a consistent effort from the supporting cast to support a night where Cade just was not at his best by any means. But all said, even with the struggles, he still finishes for the Pistons, Cade Cunningham, with 20 points. Tim Hardaway Jr. led the way with 25 points. I mentioned the 3 threes. In the beginning of the game, he only went on to make one more. He was 4 of 9 from the long line, 6 of 14 from the floor. Thought Tobias Harris kind of struggled a little bit, finished with the 10 points, but just 5 of 11 shooting. He was one of the few Pistons that was actually plus for the evening. He and Isaiah Stewart, who played really hard. And, you know, when we talk about chippiness, it's always going to involve Isaiah Stewart. But the two guys, Malik Beasley and Cade, really got shut down tonight. And the Pistons really struggled defending the 3-point line of the Pacers bigs. Myles Turner had 8 3-pointers tonight, which anytime you got a guy going off, he was 8 of 11 from the long line. So yes, that's a testament to his good shooting, but that's also an instance of them just not really defending the long line very well, them being the Pistons, of course. And then you also look at some of the areas where the Pistons got exposed. 28 points for Myles Turner, I mentioned, but Pascal Siakam had 26, had his way inside. And depending on who was matching up against the Pacers bigs, it was just an area that they were able to exploit really consistently throughout the course of this game. And then I thought Halliburton, he was plus 10 with 17 points. Everybody in that starting lineup for the Pacers was plus. Halliburton 10, Nembhard plus 9, Turner plus 16, Nesmith was plus 4, and Siakam plus 14. So that being said, just a night where the Pacers had the upper edge. They led by as many as 20 in this one, and really for the Pistons to get it within 6 a couple of times, and then even late, I think it got as close as 4, but that was just kind of a surprise effort where you felt like, and Greg Kessler made this comparison, that it was similar to that Golden State game, one of the other few games that the Pistons have lost in this new calendar year, where they didn't have their best stuff, but they kept, keeping it a game. The effort was there, trying to will your way back into a ball game when you just don't have your A game. It's like when a pitcher doesn't have his best stuff, just trying to will outs. And there was some instances with that fight tonight from the Pistons. So you certainly don't get discouraged too much, and you look to bounce back on Saturday against a good Phoenix Suns team. And what a day that'll be. My goodness. We will have a Locked On Pistons postcast after the Pistons game and before the Detroit Lions game, and then the Lions Saturday night hosting the Commanders at Ford Field. It's going to be a lot of fun. But I mentioned, I think the biggest thing to take away from tonight's game, too many turnovers. So Pistons need to clean that up, because obviously when you commit 19 turnovers, it doesn't give yourself a very good chance to win the ball game. Some other statistics to go by. I mentioned the 19 turnovers. There was 25 fast break points for the Pacers compared to 23 for the Pistons. And then the 3-point shooting for the Pacers, they were 13 of 30, Pistons 9 of 36. Leading scorer, Myles Turner with 28 points, 9 of 16 from the floor, 8 of 11 from the long line. All right, we're going to continue to keep this party going on a live Locked On Pistons postcast. The Red Wings game has gone final. They win on the road against the defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers. So there's some good news for the evening. It's not a total dud. And speaking of duds, we'll have studs and duds at the end of the program. But up next, we're going to talk about that missed opportunity and take your comments on a live Locked On Pistons postcast. Don't go anywhere here on Locked On Sports Detroit. This episode of the Locked On Pistons postcast is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is super easy to navigate, and you can make all your bets right there. The variety of bets keeps every game exciting. I love a little anytime touchdown. And you know what? I know David Montgomery is back for the Lions, but Jahmyr Gibbs, he has been a workhorse for the Lions running the ball, and the Commanders not very good against the run. So I might dabble in some anytime touchdowns with Jahmyr Gibbs and take a look at some other running plays that I might cash in on. So all you got to do to join me is visit FanDuel.com and join today. Get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. This episode is also brought to you by Skims. That's right. Listen up, guys. When I found out Skims was getting into the men's underwear game, I was intrigued because, listen, men's underwear, it's hard to find. It's hard to find the most comfortable, perfectly fitting, and everything else. And I've heard so much about the quality of Skims from friends and family, so I had to give it a try. And let me tell you, not only does it live up to the hype, it exceeds them. I've always had issues with underwear. Always. If you know me, whether I'm going for a walk on the Katy Trail, whatever it is, the underwear is just tough to find the perfect one that fits. Just finding the right style, whatever it is. And Skims changed all that. Their men's line offers something for everyone, from boxer briefs to classic briefs, designed for the perfect balance of comfort and style. I've tried the Skims, and you should too. I love the boxer briefs. That's my favorite. I'm hooked. They're perfect for my active lifestyle. They move with me when I'm out on a walk, and they never lose their shape, and they stay in place all day. So there you go. Whether I'm working out or just running errands, they're the most comfortable and reliable underwear I've ever owned. Plus, the lightweight material feels amazing. It's like you're wearing nothing at all. Shop Skims men's at skims.com/LockedOnNBA and Skims stores. Let them know we sent you. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select Locked On NBA in the drop-down menu that follows. There you go. So shop Skims men's at skims.com/LockedOnNBA. Pistons fall to the Pacers, 111-100. Pacers led by as many as 20 in this one. Pistons just kept fighting back, but eventually fell, and it was their own undoing with the 19 turnovers. Let's get to the comments. As always, appreciate everybody chiming in. Daniel Barry Sports Highlights checks in first with the good old yo. Demetrius McNeil. What sealed the Pistons' fate is the turnovers and the lack of three-point shooting. That is correct, my friend. Pistons just 9 of 36 from the long line. Malik Beasley really struggled tonight, which is a major bummer because he had been playing really well. But again, this is the example of a setback, and you got to bounce back on Saturday against the Phoenix Suns, who will certainly be looking to avenge that loss on December 21st, in which the Pistons won 133-125. There's been a lot of talk about Devin Booker and Kevin Durant and how big of football fans they are. They'll be going to the to the Lions Commanders game afterwards. Of course, Devin Booker, the Grand Rapids native, Kevin Durant, the DC native, will be rooting for the Commanders, Booker rooting for the Lions. So that maybe they'll be just completely overlooking that game against the Pistons, and Detroit will be able to take full advantage of that and get the win. But it's a triple header on Saturday too, because I believe the Red Wings play against the Tampa Bay Lightning. So we'll be very busy on that Saturday. But more about tonight, 111-100. I think there is kind of a rivalry reigniting between these two franchises, because of course, who could forget the rivalry that it was during the Malice at the Palace era, when the Pistons and that going to work team, it seemed like they always had to get past Indiana, and then Indiana wanted the smoke afterwards in 2005. And, whether it was Sheed, Ben Wallace, Chauncey, Tayshaun, Rip going up against, was it Jermaine O'Neal, Reggie Miller was still on that team, Jamal Tinsley. And then of course, Steven Jackson, how can I forget them? And Ron Artest, all those guys. That was a great rivalry. So maybe it'll be I don't know if it ever quite get back to that day, but there was a lot of chippiness out on the floor tonight. And I don't think it necessarily took the Pistons out of their game, but man, you got 48 minutes to go and take care of business. And sometimes taking care of business can get clouded when there's scores that are needing to be settled or words being exchanged, whatever it is. It seemed like the Pistons had gotten taken out of their game tonight, and that's the disappointing part of this all. So they got to for sure try to bounce back on Saturday. But I mentioned, as it stands with the standings, the Pistons could have jumped the Pacers from 7th in the Eastern Conference up to 6th, because the Pacers entered just a half game ahead of the Pistons. And so that's a little bit of a disappointment there, in hopes of trying to jump past Indiana and not quite getting it done tonight. Some other observations I had from tonight, it just felt like a lot of the defensive sets, they weren't able to recover to close out on shooters. And again, sometimes teams are going to be hot. I think the Pacers were hot at one point, and it doesn't matter how well you close out when a shooter's feeling it. But there were other times where, whether it be Duren or any of the other bigs trying to rotate out to the Pacers bigs that were shooting, was just not really. It was a lack of execution there defensively. I thought one other thing, the Pistons kind of lost focus early in that game. In the first quarter, there was out of a timeout when Indiana implemented a full court press, and the Pistons looked like they had never broke a press before, and they just turned the ball over. And it's just one of the 19 turnovers, but again, it was kind of emblematic of what the Pistons brought tonight, as far as a level of focus, or lack thereof, in which they weren't their best. But going to have games like these, and how you respond is really what JB Bickerstaff and company will be focusing on. So Pistons fall to the Pacers 111-100. When we come back, we'll have our studs and duds, and we'll tie a bow on this one, look ahead to the upcoming schedule, and continue to take your comments. It all happens next on a live Locked On Pistons postcast here on Locked On Sports Detroit. This episode of the Locked On Pistons postcast is brought to you by Robinhood Gold. With Robinhood Gold, you can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3.3% IRA match on retirement contributions. The privileges of the very privileged are no longer exclusive. With Robinhood Gold, your annual IRA contributions are boosted by 3%. Plus, you also get 4% APY on your cash and non-retirement accounts. That's over 8 times the national savings average. The perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. To receive your 3% boost on an annual IRA contributions, sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold at $5 per month for the first year. From first match, must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to Robinhood.com/boost. Over 8 times the national average savings account interest rate. Claim is based on data from the FDIC as of November 18, 2024. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. Studs and duds portion of the program. As always, get your studs and duds in the comments, and we will read them, because there were a lot more duds than studs if you're a fan of the Detroit Pistons. So we will start with my dud, and I'm just going to go team-wide collectively. They felt really flat to come out, and even though they were able to somewhat salvage that first quarter, there were times where Indiana just had the quicker first step. They had the upper hand. Ultimately, it's 29-26 after one quarter of play. But in that second quarter, Indiana really extended its lead, outscoring the Pistons 40-30, and it was just too much of a hole to climb out of. Now, the defensive effort was better in both the third and fourth quarter, but just team-wide, a lackluster performance, and the stat sheet with the 19 turnovers showed that. So I'm going to dud the entire effort from the team, because there wasn't really a player that stood out for the right reasons in this one, in comparison to how this team is capable of playing. And that's the other frustrating part, is they really had been playing such a better brand of basketball that it's kind of a bummer the way this one played out. Stud for Tim Hardaway Jr. He had the first 10 points of the game, finished with 25, but he's not necessarily the guy that you can lean on to carry you from an offensive standpoint. Is he a great role player and support player when he's on? Absolutely. His ability to stretch the floor and knock down deep threes certainly helps, especially when the dribble penetration is there and from Cade and other guys. But as a floor spacer, he can absolutely help you. But tonight he was asked to do a lot more. The 25 points and 9 of 11 from the foul line, 4 of 9 from three-point land, and 6 of 14 from the floor overall. But not really a ton on the stud-wise things to go around, unfortunately, tonight for the Pistons. But you do have to give credit to Myles Turner with 28 points, 8 of 11 shooting. I thought Pascal Siakam was really good as well. He was a menace inside and both impacted both the offensive and defensive sides of the floor. So, yeah, I mean, you kind of figure out different ways to say the same thing over and over, that the Pacers were just the better team tonight. If you've got some studs and duds, let me know in the comments. I do want to mention, I thought Ron Holland really struggled at times tonight, and same with Azar Thompson. You know, those guys, they're young, they're learning. There's going to be some growing pains. I don't want to narrow in on them too much. Even Simone Fontecchio had a couple of open looks that he missed. He did knock down the 1-3 that you thought, all right, maybe that will help the Pistons get on a little bit of a roll here. Not so fast there. So again, just kind of a disappointing night all the way around. We got a lot of comments to get to here. Mr. My City, flat from the start, not Cade's night at all. Indy shadowed him very well. Exactly what we said in the opening, Mr. My City. You're spot on. That was clearly their game plan, just to take Cade out of his game, and they succeeded in doing that. Tobias pulled a Tobias tonight, and turnover. Enjoyed the chippiness, though. Yeah, there you go. And I like what JV Bickerstaff had to say after the game. Like, the Pistons, and he said it, we kicked their ass on their home floor, and there wasn't that same energy. So perhaps the Pacers just kind of picking and choosing when they want to bring out that side of things. Let's see. We've got Dwayne Pritchett, Ron Holland, and Asar keep making dumb fouls. Pacers defense was good. Yeah, they do. And that's a sign of, there's some signs of rookie growth that need to make some improvements, and some of that's growing pains, and others, you would hope them that they would minimize and mitigate that learning curve at the next level a little bit quicker. All right, Mr. My City with a couple of other ones. Stu was the player of the game, in my opinion. No energy at all tonight. Holland never got a chance. Yeah, they did. They lacked energy. Stu did his best. He's just so limited offensively. And what did he have? I think he had 13 boards, so he's doing his best out there. But yeah, he finished with 13 rebounds, 2 points. He was +5. But again, the offense, you got to have some guys that put the bucket in the basket, the ball in the basket. You know what I'm trying to say. Moses Rio says, you think too many days off? Well, it wasn't like an egregious amount of time. They just had 2 days off, but they did look a little sluggish, because it's so funny in the NBA. Sometimes guys say, we can't play that second night of a back-to-back. And then other times guys say, too much time off. But I think it was just a matter of coming out a little bit flat and not having the A game. Here's Moses Rio says, that's what happens when the NBA put Pistons on their radar. I like it when the NBA doesn't pay attention to our team. Yeah, maybe there is something to be said about that. And you want that, though. You want a target on your back. You want teams to take notice of you, and you want to beat teams when they give you your best shot. You don't want to be the team known as the snoozer, the team that you can sleepwalk against. So if the Pistons have awoken the rest of the NBA, then so be it. That's ultimately what you're trying to become as the Pistons here. All right, Mr. My City, when did Myles Turner become world's greatest shooter? I expected McConnell to go off per usual, but Turner was torching us, and not adjusting was no adjusting was done defensively. Yeah. That's where I mentioned I didn't like Duren's closeouts. He really struggled. And that allowed for Turner to have those open looks. Now, again, you have to knock him down, which he did, but man, it was a clinic from the Pacers offense in those stretches in the second quarter where they were really pulling away and adding to that lead, and then a little bit in the third as well. But appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. I know after a loss, it's not as much fun as after a win, and we've been spoiled with a lot of victorious Locked On Pistons postcasts. But as always, I appreciate everybody tuning in. My name is Jake Riepma. I am the host of Locked On Sports Detroit, so I'll be with you after the game on Saturday and after the Lions game for a Locked On Lions postcast. As always, you can find the audio version of the live show that corresponds with the podcast platform. So Locked On Pistons will be on the Locked On Pistons platform, Locked On Lions, of course, on the Lions platform, all where you get your podcast free and available, and of course on YouTube as well. Shout out to the everydayers. Appreciate you guys tuning in. And as always, check out Locked On Pistons with Koo. Curious what he'll have to say after this one. A little bit of a snooze fest from the Pistons. They'll look to bounce back on Saturday against the Suns. Busy day for Locked On Sports Detroit on Saturday between the Pistons and the Lions, and you can't forget the Red Wings in there as well. They beat the Panthers tonight, so at least one of our teams got a W. But make sure you subscribe to Locked On Sports Detroit. We're growing that subscription base, trying to get up to 2,000. Give me a follow on Twitter at Jake_Riepma. I'll follow you back, and we'll continue to follow along as the Detroit Pistons will look to bounce back on Saturday against the Phoenix Suns. Until then, have a wonderful evening, and we'll talk to you next time on Locked On Sports Detroit.